Hello.
Hi.
Hi, are we on?
We're good to go. Everyone's joining in right now. We're
Awesome.
about 30 seconds early. I'm sorry. I just couldn't wait. I'm so excited.
The heat's getting to you, Lainey.
I think it might be.
Are we actually live? Cool. Why don't we just wait 30 more seconds?
It's officially 6 o'clock right now.
It is. Oh, now it is. All right, it just happened. All right. So we'll start. Folks are coming in, yes? Good. Oh. Well, hi everyone. It's Virginia Stanley, Lainey Mays, and Grace Caternolo, and we're back with another episode of Writers to Watch. Hi, Grace. Hi, Lainey.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. We're so excited for this hour, and we went a little an hour early just to accommodate because we have different time zones happening here, and so we want to make sure that we can accommodate everyone. And so this worked out just fine. Lady Grace, do you have anything that you want to say before we start?
All good here?
Eh,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm glad everyone can join us because we have a stellar lineup tonight.
we do. We do. Okay. So without further ado,
Hey, V, do we want to tell everyone about our upcoming shenanigans at ALA?
please tell them about the shenanigans.
We have great news for you. We will be at ALA making not absolute fools of ourselves, but if this graphic is any indication of the fun that there is to come at our book buzz Saturday the 29th at 8:30 in the morning, you should be excited. And I'm gonna toss a link into the chat on Crowdcast and Facebook where you can find our whole ALA schedule and our buzz and all of the author signings and different events that we'll be at. So if you're gonna be at ALA in San Diego, booth 824, come swing by, say hello.
Oh, we've already got a comment. It says, "Is that a seal? LOL." And then someone said, "Loved your surfing promo." So if you want to see the video we made that this graphic comes from, go to that link Grace is sharing because it's super fun.
It was a dream come
Yeah.
true. I've always wanted to be next to a sea lion, a seal. I'm really not sure what the difference is between those.
Yeah, I guess it is. I
So
don't know. You know what? It can be anything we want it to be.
It can be, but what it is fun. And we really hope that you can join us for our buzz. Sign up. Just click on the link and let us know that you can join us. We'd love to have you. There'll be some breakfast goods there and lots of books. And actually, the tonight's episode of Writers to Watch, we will show a snippet of that there, and you'll hear more about the books, these 4 books, as well as all of the others. So please do join us if you can. And you don't have to go to any of the other publishers, just go to HarperCollins. You got it. Now, without further ado, let us begin. We have such a stellar lineup today. We are so excited to bring Paula Hawkins, author of The Blue Hour, Anna Montague, our lead read winner, debut novelist. How does that make you feel, Magda Eklund? Nikki May, who wrote This Motherless Land, and Emily Layden, Once More from the Top. So it's a real treat for us and for you to have these authors all together. So as we do, we bring one author on at a time, ask them to talk a little bit about their book. And when they're done, when all 4 authors are done talking about their books ever so briefly, then we ask you all to bring your questions. You can send them in as we go, type them in. We will ask them. So have your questions ready. Just type them in the chat box. And so let's start with Paula Hawkins, author of the forthcoming book, The Blue Hour. Now, that cool jacket, love it. I love it. Yep, that's great. And Paula, are you there? Yes, you are, because we just talked to you. Paula. turn on your camera. All right, maybe we'll go out of order. What do we think? I don't know. She's right there because we just spoke with Paula. Okay.
I sent a
Okay,
little.
am I
okay, cool.
back?
Hi.
Yes. Sorry. Hello,
Yeah.
everybody. Sorry,
Yeah.
I lost the little buttons at the bottom there for a moment.
I hate that. Nerve-wracking. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here,
Oh, we're so
to be
happy.
joining you,
I'm sorry?
to be joining you at least in spirit.
Yes. Well, it was such a thrill for Lainey and Grace and I to meet you last month in New York. And so it was so nice to talk with you and to hear about the book. And this is just such a treat. We're thrilled to have you on our list at the House of Harper here. Just thrilled, Mariner Books. Now, I'm going to do a brief introduction, Paula, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the Blue Hour. So, Paula Hawkins worked as a journalist for 15 years before turning her hand to fiction. She is the author of 2 #1 New York Times bestselling novels, Into the Water and The Girl on the Train. An international #1 bestseller, The Girl on the Train has sold over 23 million copies worldwide and has been adapted into a major motion picture. Into the Water was also a Sunday Times and New York Times #1 bestseller, selling over 4 million copies worldwide, and her thriller, A Slow Fire Burning, was also a New York Times bestseller. Paula was born in Zimbabwe and now splits her time between London and Edinburgh. Her forthcoming book, The Blue Hour, is set on an isolated Scottish island. This is a stylish, immersive new novel of ambition, legacy, and betrayal. It has such an ominous tone, and everyone in this book seems to have a secret. Paula, thank you so much for coming on today. Can you let everybody know what you want them to know about the Blue Hour?
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Yeah, The Blue Hour is a novel of psychological suspense. It's, as you said, it's set on a remote tidal island off the coast of Scotland that is home to just one person, a famous, some might say infamous artist called Vanessa Chapman, who's gone to this island to find a kind of freedom to live and work as she wants. And she finds that, she does, she finds her freedom. But one of the effects of being so cut off from the world is that it's not always clear to her when people come to her island, who is a threat, who is a friend, who's going to disrupt her peace. So the book, it actually opens after Vanessa's death, when a rather morbid discovery is made about one of her artworks. So one of the things Vanessa does is she makes sculpture out of found objects like driftwood or bones or what have you. And somebody who visits a museum claims that a bone in one of her sculptures is actually human, not animal, as it is on the listing. And there's no way of finding out for sure because this bone is encased in a piece. You can't get at it. So the curator of the museum that owns this piece kind of has to play detective. He's a man called Becker. He travels to the island where Vanessa lived, and there he meets Grace, who was Vanessa's friend, her companion, her carer at the end of her life. And they form this kind of slightly uneasy relationship. Grace is very wary of the stranger who's come to find out things about their lives. But through their conversations, we start to sort of unravel what went on in Vanessa's life, how her ambition and her dedication to her art kind of shaped her and affected all of her relationships, how they affected the people around her. And we find out that Vanessa was a much loved and admired woman, but she was also quite difficult. And she had quite difficult relationships, particularly with men, particularly with her estranged husband, who, by the way, is a man who went missing some years before her death and whose body was never found. It's a relatively short novel. It's the shortest I've written, I think. It's quite sort of tight. It takes place just over the course of a couple of weeks, although we do go back in time to the early days of Vanessa's life, to her unhappy marriage, and we also go back to Grace's earlier life and find out what it was that brought her to this very lonely place. The island itself is quite a big character. It's a tidal island, so for half the day, it's inaccessible. So people can get trapped there, or they can be prevented from going there. The island sort of dictates, at certain points, it dictates the action almost. Perhaps inevitably for a book about an artist, it's the novel's concerned with perception, what we see, what we fail to see, how we interpret or misinterpret what we see. The title, The Blue Hour, is, of course, that liminal time after dusk when the sun has gone from the sky, but there's still blue light in the sky. It's a time when it's quite easy to mistake things, as one of the characters says, to mistake a wolf for a dog. It's about the tension between the need to belong and the need to be free of the demands of others. And I was thinking about this particularly in terms of how it affects artists. I think all the writers here will know that we can have this desire to be alone to work, and yet there's always a tension between that state and the needing to be out there in the world, needing to get inspiration, needing to talk to people. So that the novel sort of plays with the tension between those two things. It's a book about friendship and loyalty and the way women try to take care of each other. And of course, it's a mystery with at least one body and possibly more to be uncovered, and quite a few twists and turns along the way. I really hope you're all going to enjoy it.
There's so much in this book. And I think that, the island itself, as you were saying, is a character that it's inaccessible for 12 hours a day. And this idea of isolation, and what makes someone choose to live in a place where no one can reach this person, and she couldn't reach anyone. I mean, I think that's very, very clever and kind of haunting in a way.
And something I sometimes dream about. Running away to an island where no one can get to me. But yes, you have to be a certain sort of person, I think, to want to do that.
How long would you last?
Not like a week, probably less.
Can't wait for the tide to come in. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
It's genius. It's great. Thank you so much. That's
Thank you.
just given us all the wonderful bits to just dive into this book. Okay, so we're going to come back with questions for you about the book and Vanessa and the island. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Grace, who will introduce Emily.
Great, thanks, V. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm very excited for everyone to hear about Once More from the Top, which was such a fun read. And I want to start off by saying that if you ever decide that you don't want to be a writer and want to do a pop album, you have one guaranteed listener. I am right here. So
Thank you.
But first, I'll tell everyone a little bit about you before we dive into the book. Emily Layden is the author of All Girls, which she developed and wrote an adaptation of for HBO. A graduate of Stanford University, Emily has had her writing appear in the New York Times, Marie Claire, Town & Country, and Runner's World. A former high school English teacher, she lives in upstate New York. I also just want to say I'm not the only one who loved this book. We had such a wonderful slew of quotes coming in, but Rufy Thorpe, one of our authors of Margot's Got Money Troubles, said, "A deliciously insidery peek into the music industry and fame. Layden has a gift for making the world and her characters feel wonderfully real. You won't be able to put it down." And I entirely agree. And I'll let you get right into it.
Thank you so much for that. So this novel really grew out of my own fascination with contemporary fame. I think particularly the experiences of famous women and the kind of necessary tightrope they walk between being really accessible and really aspirational. I wanted to write about what it must feel like to have millions of people think that they really truly know you, and the impossibility that they ever could. And I think nowhere does this tension feel more alive to me than in the world of music, where an artist confesses some of their innermost thoughts and feelings to stadiums full of screaming fans. I'm just really obsessed with the psychology of that, with the kind of blurred lines between myth and reality, between the person and the persona. It's this like high wire act of manufactured intimacy, and that tension is where Once More from the Top begins. At the heart of the story is this iconic country star turned pop queen named Dylan Reed. Everyone in the world knows Dylan or has at least heard her music. Since releasing her debut album her senior year of high school, Dylan's been a fixture on country and pop radio and in the celebrity discourse. A prodigiously talented singer-songwriter, or so they say, Dylan is defined by both her confessional lyricism and her good girl image. It's this combination that keeps her fans close, the label happy, and the media fed. But the truth is that Dylan has a secret, one thing she's never explicitly written about before. Her childhood best friend Kelsey vanished when they were both in high school, shortly before Dylan became famous. Now, as Dylan's at the height of her career, Kelsey's body is found at the bottom of their hometown lake, forcing Dylan to return to the place they grew up and to reckon with secrets that have stayed buried for decades. You know, when I started writing this story, I just like really couldn't have imagined the current cultural moment we're in, right? With like new albums from Ariana and Maggie and Beyonce and Sabrina and Chappell Roan with the songs of the summer, and Olivia and Taylor's tour is still like dominating the monoculture. It's like not only pop girl summer, but it really might be like the biggest moment in female pop superstardom in music history. But I think what feels really noteworthy about a lot of those women and the protagonist I wrote isn't only their unparalleled success, but also our perceived closeness to them. If we think about both Taylor Swift and Beyonce, for example, they've worked really hard to cultivate these personas from work that is deeply personal. And that's why we love them. And that's really what I wanted to write about in this book. And I feel so lucky to be publishing in this moment and to have an opportunity like this, because I think in a lot of ways, like, a book is just a writer's excuse to publicly obsess over the things their friends and family are kind of sick hearing them talk about. And so I'm super excited to share this, and I really hope that everyone enjoys it and that I have the chance to talk to you about it.
Thank you so much. It really is like you said, the perfect moment for this. I am like working on a Once More from the Top playlist right now. This has really sparked some inspiration, and I'm sure that you can guess some of the songs that are on there. But thank you so much. I'm gonna pass it off to Lainey.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, next up we have Anna Montague. There we go. Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
Welcome, Anna. So beautiful cover up on the screen. I can't wait to talk about this book. I think all of us are just have been so excited, and we're so happy that we have your debut at HarperCollins. So I'm gonna do a little intro. So Anna Montague is a writer and editor living in Brooklyn. How Does That Make You Feel? MAGDA EKLUND is her first novel, coming out on October 22nd, and it's our lead read of the season. That is a program where the Salesforce kind of votes and each season, and we kind of promote this book. So you've got lead read. That was such a big deal. We were so excited. And this funny, moving novel came into all of our inboxes, and I think we were all really swept away by it. It's perfect for fans of books that blend darker aspects of life, like loss, and combines it with a really hopeful side of life, like rediscovering oneself. And you do it so elegantly. So I can't wait to hear more about How Does That Make You Feel, MAGDA EKLUND. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and in such stellar company. Well, How Does That Make You Feel? MAGDA EKLUND is about a psychiatrist who's about to turn 70, and her life has been completely dictated by routine. Her best friend, Sarah, who's just died the year before, was the one who determined how she celebrated her birthday, where she went to dinner, what cultural events she took in, and she's been completely adrift. since Sarah's passing. And since Sarah's passed, Sarah's widower moved on almost immediately with a new woman who wants every trace of Sarah gone from the apartment, which means that Magda has started taking in all of her friends' possessions, her clothes, her couches, all sorts of other belongings. And Fred, the widower, eventually tells her that he has one more thing for her. It's Sarah's correspondence, all of her letters. And in this, Magda unearths a plan, a journal that set out a 70th birthday road trip for her and Magda to take together. And then Fred calls and said, there's just one more thing. My new girlfriend's moving in, so I actually need you to take Sarah's urn for the summer. And this sets Magda off on a rollicking road trip with her best friend's urn strapped in alongside her, taking her to places that were significant to both of them at different points in their lives. So Magda's childhood home in Ohio, Sarah's home of New Orleans and Baton Rouge, takes them to Texas, all over the place. And she meets a cast of sort of wild and wacky characters as she's forced to really consider this friendship in retrospective and the ways in which it was significant to her, the ways in which it fell short, the things she wished she'd done differently, all the while trying to parse what it means to live without Sarah and what she wants to do with the rest of her time. And this idea came about in a lot of ways because I was talking to my aging grandparents and they were terrified of death, in such a way that they wanted to speak about it all the time. And what I found them fixing on were specific golden periods in their life. My grandfather would fall back on this one period of research that he'd done, and he couldn't quite let go of it. And my grandmother turned back towards religion, and that was a real comfort to her. Both of them, I think, were thinking about what would be left behind for them when they went. And for my grandfather, the work was first and foremost. And Magda's a bit of a workaholic. That was definitely drawn from him. But I kept thinking about what it would mean if the golden period of your life wasn't necessarily something that you've done, but what if it was the time that you'd spent with another person? How do you come to terms with that sort of loss? And how do you figure out how to reconceive of your own life in the aftermath, right? Because even when these horrible things happen, it's not like you lose someone and then all of a sudden you don't have to buy groceries anymore. All the same things still need to happen. You're just doing it through an entirely different perspective. So that's Magda.
I can't really emphasize enough how much Magda sticks with somebody. I was highlighting as I was going and I went back to look at them because it's been a while since I've read it. So I went back to look at these. I'm like, oh my God, dang, that's good. It sticks with you. And she's just going through all of this. It's really honest and unflinching too. But I also want to read this quote from Kristen Arnett. It says, a road trip novel with a tremendous amount of heart. I ached along with the characters, rooted for them, wished them all the best. Truly a novel that asks you to consider the winding secret path to love that sits lodged in every person's breast. It'll stay. So congratulations on the debut novel. Very exciting. And thank you for sharing Magda's story with us.
I'm so excited to see it going out into the world.
Yeah. Okay, we'll be back. So until then, I'm going to hand it off to Virginia.
Thank you. And thank you, Anna. We are so excited. Layden and I were on the lead read committee, and that book just blew everybody's hair back. So congrats to you. And now we have Nikki May. Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Good. So Nikki, a brief intro of you, and then I'll ask you to talk a little bit about this Motherless Land, your forthcoming book. So born in Bristol and raised in Lagos, Nikki May is Anglo-Nigerian. Her critically acclaimed debut novel, Wahala, won the Comedy Women in Print New Voice Prize, was longlisted for the Goldsboro Glass Bell Award and the Diverse Books Award, and it's being turned into a major BBC TV drama series. Nikki lives in Dorset with her husband, 2 standard schnauzers, and way too many books. She should be working on her next book, but is probably reading, and I don't blame you. Your forthcoming book, This Motherless Land, is a retelling of Mansfield Park. This book is just so multi-layered and kind of hard to, I think, for me anyway, to succinctly describe this book. And you're going to go more into detail. But there's this great quote by Charmaine Wilkerson, New York Times bestselling author of Black Cake, and I think this pretty much positions this book. A vibrant coming-of-age story that explores loss, longing, and belonging in a multicultural family. I never stopped believing in the bond between troubled cousins Funke and Layden, despite their cultural differences. This Motherless Land paints a memorable picture of a British Nigerian girl struggling with loss and identity amid two cultures. And with that, I turn it to you, Nikki, to tell everyone what you want them to know about This Motherless Land.
Thank you very much. It is difficult to talk about this book without spoilers, so I'm going to sort of talk around it, if you like. I adore Jane Austen. I'm an absolute Austen stan. And although Mansfield Park isn't necessarily everybody's favourite of her works, I think the idea of a young girl being ripped away from everything she knows and loves and dropped into an alien environment where she has to prove herself over and over again is genius. And that became my jumping off point for my book. But This Motherless Land is a reimagining, not a retelling. I used Mansfield Park as a scaffolding to build a very different story around. And it's a very personal story about belonging and not belonging, about privilege, about prejudice, about place and displacement. I recreated Fanny Price as Funke. Like the original, she's quiet and conformist, but hopefully my Funke is less pious and insipid than Fanny. She doesn't need a lie down after a short walk, that's for sure. And I think I said this is a personal story. Well, I wasn't kidding. We meet Funke in 1978 in Lagos. She's living a very happy middle-class life in my house with my parrot Billy. She rides my green chopper around the campus streets with her little brother, just like I did. She goes to my primary school, spends weekends on my beach collecting cuttlefish bones, and she reads Enid Blyton books and to get an insight into England, and she thinks that's what it's really like, tries to get her head around alien concepts like tongue sandwiches and lashings of ginger beer. Funke's mother is inspired by my mother, who taught at my primary school. She was adored by all the students, mainly because she abhorred capital punishment, which lots of Nigerian teachers loved. And Funke is very conformist. She tries her hardest to fit in and to blend and to be one of them, which is quite difficult when you stick out like a sore thumb and get called Oyinbo wherever you go. When Funke's mother dies in a tragic accident, she's sent to England to live with her maternal family in Somerset. She sticks out like a sore thumb there. She's the only Black in the village, and she's traumatized by grief, but against a background of condescension and unconscious plus very conscious bias, she strives to fit in, to become one of them. Because we're not in Georgian times anymore, I recreated Edmund as Liv, because cousin sex would give my readers the ick. So Liv is free-spirited, she's a rebel, and she wants to break free of her joyless family. When Funke arrives, they become the closest of friends, they become allies, and Liv becomes fiercely protective of her little cousin. They give each other what they most need, which is love, because at its heart, This Motherless Land is a love story, just not the romantic kind. I set out to explore whether love can make the difference between surviving and thriving. I love mirrored lives in literature. There's something really compelling about seeing two people set up to reflect each other. It's a really good way to explore fate and chance and possibility. So the reader gets to compare and contrast Liv and Funke along very simple binaries. One is Black, one is white, one is poor, one is rich, one's a conformist, one's a rebel. One has a wonderful mother, one has a terrible mother, because as its name implies, mothers are very much central to this story. And I kind of set up a question: what's worse, a wonderful mother who's dead, or a terrible mother who's alive. In Mansfield Park, Fanny's mother marries to disoblige her family. And to quote Austen, by fixing on a lieutenant of the Marines without education, fortune, or connections, she did so very thoroughly. Well, Funke's mother fixes on a doctor, but he's black, so the result is pretty much the same. Neither could have made a more untoward choice. Both are cut off as a punishment. Liv's mother is Margot, and she's basically the Mrs. Norris, who I think is Jane Austen's only thoroughly evil character. I'm drawn to stories about family. I just love this idea of, can you inherit love? Can you inherit loss? In Wahala, it was all about the fathers. In This Motherless Land, I'm afraid the mothers get it. And the choices Funke and Liv's mothers made haunt them and really shape the trajectory of the book. And that's what kind of propels the narrative. In Mansfield Park, the Bertram's fortune is all based on slavery. They got their money from the slave trade, but no Black people make it onto the page. In fact, I think the word slave is only mentioned once in the whole book. I kind of think I've corrected that. I've given us a decolonial twist because my book covers thorny issues like race and culture, identity and belonging in both my homes, England and Nigeria. And fortunately, privilege and prejudice are universal. I face both in both my homes, and that's sort of reflected in the book. I always set out to entertain when I write, so although I've covered some weighty tomes, it's supposed to be a fun, page-turning, enjoyable read, although it might make you cry at times. And I've had such a good time writing it. It was fun to mock the irrationality and ridiculousness of prejudice, which I think Jane is something I'm obsessed with. Jane, she has this way of mocking the way, the human nature, if you like. I loved writing about my two cultures because whilst my personal sense of belonging hasn't been in a straight line, sometimes it's concrete, sometimes it's elusive, I've finally come to terms with the fact that I can be both, not half, and it's possible to belong to two places and also belong nowhere. But Funke is 9 years old when I rip her away from everything she knows and loves, which kind of gives you a really good lens to see these issues of my two homes through. And that's This Motherless Land in a sort of nutshell.
Boy, oh boy, that's, you said it all. I mean, it's really, and she's so endearing, you know, you just love her because you get to see her with her mom and her family and you know, her brother, and they're fighting, and it's just a regular household, and but where she's got a lot of spirit and she's got a lot of heart, and there's a lot that you tackle in this book. You know, obviously it's great for book clubs because there's so much to discuss with grief and class and race and prejudice, so there's just so much to talk about. Thank you for bringing her to all of us readers. Thank you. Now everybody has talked about their book, so I think everybody should come back on, and then we can read the questions to you from folks who are watching, and there are many. Hi.
Right.
So before we get started on the questions, and we do have a lot of different questions, and we'll get to everybody's question. I did want to read this really neat quote for Paula's book. There are many. The raves are in, and they are many. But Nick Herron, the author of Slow Horses, which is this amazing series of books, and now page to stage on the screen, says it's very good, reminiscent of Du Maurier, art, islands, missing spouses, a compelling piece of work, hard to put down. I love that. It's just, it's so perfect. All right. So Lainey, Grace, let's look at the questions, and we'll start asking. I think Lainey, you had one right away for Anna. Yep.
Well, we've had questions about backgrounds of everyone speaking. One, we want to know about the dogs and Nikki's background, but also we had a few keen eyes zone in on something in your background. Anna, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, you'll see on both sides, I have some urns with me, and it's not necessarily that it was a preoccupation before the novel. I would actually to publicly state I have famously not had any interest in urns, but since the book deal was announced, they've started showing up at my apartment. And at first, receiving a bunch of urns in the mail is pretty, it feels like a bit of a threat. It turned out it was just a loving gesture presumably from friends and family. Nothing else has come of it. But at this point, I have about 15 urns in the apartment. I took out a range of them. So there's the Bitsy one. That one is probably the largest. And then we have most recently added to the collection is this very tasteful bedazzled urn.
Oh, can you please put that one up front and center?
Yeah, I'll just leave it right here.
That's swell.
Yeah, just in case
Do you
anyone's-
think book tour you're gonna take an urn each event? You think maybe that?
I think, you know what, the number of times I've been asked for an urn since announcing the book and been able to provide them to people, I think it's probably best that I keep an urn at my person. Most times I'm out.
I love that.
I did
Love
drop when I brought one for someone, and there's this huge aluminum urn that looked like it was wood paneled, and someone had asked me for an urn, so I brought it for them. It turns out it was too large, but it topples out of my bag in the subway, and you can just see everyone recognize it as an urn as it slowly rolls away. And I picked it up and I thought, there's really nothing to do but continue on. You can't pretend it's not an urn that just came out of your bag.
Couldn't you run down the subway train and just say, Grandpa?
Yeah. I wish I had thought of that in the moment.
Or maybe it's good publicity. You'll get on the news as who's this person with urns, and there
Right.
you go.
Next time I drop one.
Thank you for sharing your urns. And Nikki, I don't know if you want to talk about these beautiful dogs behind you.
Yes, I'm owned by two standard schnauzers, Fella and Lola, who usually in my office when I'm writing, but obviously it's way too late. They're very spoilt, lazy dogs, so they've hopped off to bed. But Fella's named after Nigerian Elvis. Fella Ransom Kuti he's dead now, but he was like the biggest Afro pop star ever, and he's named after him. And yeah, can be quite annoying.
Love it. Love it. Well, I'm glad that you're drawing inspiration from them and we can look at them. Thank you. Do we have any other questions about backgrounds, or can we go into book questions? Okay. So I'm going to start with Donna Rasmussen, who has a question from Paula. She says, are your main characters based on people you knew or know, or historical characters? What inspired you to define their relationship the way you did? Love the meaning behind the title. Me too.
Well, thank you very much for that question. Yeah, the characters, they're not inspired by anyone specific. Again, the artist Vanessa, I borrowed little bits from a few artists that I admire and that I'm interested in. There's a Scottish artist called Joan Ardley, and I've taken some of Vanessa's painting style comes from Joan Ardley, some other sort of biographical details, but I'm sort of cherry picking. The other characters are all pure imagination. I mean, I say pure imagination, obviously, like all novelists, I sort of steal things all the time. I steal from life. I steal from, things that I see, and you're constantly picking up bits that that will be useful in character, but none of them are actually based on real people to any degree.
Thank you. In a similar vein, Kim asks of Emily, pop stars are all the rage and the image building is more important than ever before. Was there a pop star that gave you the inspiration for Dylan?
I mean, similar to Paula's answer, I also, Dylan is an amalgamation of a lot of stars past and present. I talked about Taylor and Beyonce when I was talking about the book. I'm a huge fan of both of theirs. But, I was also thinking about Joni Mitchell. I was thinking about the way we talk about Joni's work, right? Like Joni as a confessional artist and how that was like really used against her early in her career. I love Dolly Parton, and I think a lot about like how we consume Joni and Dolly and their versions of authenticity so differently. And so those, I was really pulling from reaching back through the decades and pulling from all kinds of references to build this character that allowed me to comment on a lot of the things I think about when I think about pop music.
Yeah, I loved when I was reading, like kind of going through, and I felt like I was almost like playing into some parasocial relationship with a character that doesn't actually exist. Because I was like, oh, that kind of reminds me of this person and this. And yeah, and you even mentioned Joni Mitchell's Blue in it, which is back on Spotify. If anybody didn't know, you can go back and listen to Joni Mitchell's music. So
I wonder what gave there, because she was famously not letting it be on Spotify. So
yeah, I'm not sure, honestly. If anybody knows, let me know. But thank you. Virginia, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. There's a question here for Nikki. Would you classify yourself as a romantic? Do you credit Austen with your interest in the deeper theologies of love and its inheritance? I am fascinated by all you have said.
I
That's from
don't know
Donna.
that I don't know that I would classify myself as a romantic. I think I'm a bit too cynical and spiky, but I do love writing about platonic relationships, and I do think there's something wonderful about female relationships. I think there's something enduring about them. I think there's something very I think we demand a hell of a lot from our female friends, and that's quite an interesting dynamic to play on. As for crediting Austen, I just absolutely love her. I read Pride and Prejudice at least once a year. I listen to Sense and Sensibility. I just think she's so clever about human nature. And I think because she gets human nature so well, her books will last forever because human nature doesn't change. But I do think if Austen was writing now, she might not be as obsessed with romance and marriage as she was then. Back in those days, the only option for a woman was to get married. It was basically the only career choice you had. And I think perhaps if she was writing now, her women would be slightly different and wouldn't necessarily be dead set on romance.
Sometimes it baffles me like how much we're still talking about like romance and rom-coms and things like that. It's just like it never goes away. You know, Jane brought it and it's always here because no one's figured out love. And it's
And it's
fascinating.
comforting. There's something just comforting about it. I do
Yeah.
watch my fair share, to be fair.
Anna, so Donna has a question. What similarities do you and Magda share? Or what was your inspiration for her character? She's someone I would like to know, she says.
I mean, I feel like I have always been a senior citizen at heart. In terms of hobbies, schedule, I feel very familiar with that life. But I would say that a really deep interest, as most writers have, in human nature. I think writers and psychiatrists are pretty similar that way, in that there's a lot about the world that we want to figure out by exploring other people. And I thought Magda was especially fascinating because you have this psychiatrist who's so intent on avoiding her own issues that she just seeks out to solve everyone else's. And that's kind of all that she can focus on until she's forced to turn to her own life. And so I do think that that sort of maybe the stubbornness we have in common. And now at this point, proximity to urns, I suppose, is our other main commonality.
I do have a question for everyone. So Pam says, I'm a huge audiobook fan. What do you see as the role of audiobooks and their impact on you as a writer? Anybody can take that.
I'll go first if you like. Because of Fella and Lola, I do a lot of walking and I absolutely love walking. And I often have my ears on and an audio book when I'm walking, and my husband can tell if I'm really enjoying my book because my walks get longer and longer. And if 3.5 hours later I'm not back, he knows, gosh, she must be in a really juicy bit of her book. I just love them. I think there are also certain books, like I find the classics are easier on audiobook for me. There's just something about having them said into my head that's easier than reading them. Also, maybe the writing in classics often tends to be really small. So I think an audiobook covers that off. I love them. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I
Audio?
like to listen to them as a secondary form. I love to read the book, imagine it. I like to read it on paper and then listen to it. I just find that other interpretation of it to be so dynamic and interesting. Every time I learn something new about the book that I would have missed previously.
And somebody very big reads your book, and I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head everyone's, but I know that Cynthia Nixon is going to read How Does That Make You Feel, MAGDA. So.
Yeah, she's great. And I did not once do the Steve voice and say Melinda when I went to the session, which was frankly remarkable.
I love it. It's fine if not, but if anyone has anything else to say about audiobooks.
Yeah. If not, I have a question for Paula.
Okay.
Paula, Kim wants to know, as a writer, do you prefer isolation like your book characters? I mean, isolation while you write.
I do. I'm not one of those people who go to cafes or even libraries to write. I really like isolation. I like to be on my own. I like silence, which is a big bone of contention between me and my partner. He listens to a lot of music, and so that's there's a bit of a war goes on about that. But no, I'm one of those people when I'm writing, I like to be completely immersed. I'm not a great multitasker. I want to just focus on the book at hand. So yeah, I mean, ideally I would probably like to escape to an island, but obviously like real life intrudes. You can't always do that. But that would probably be my ideal writing situation when nobody could bother me for ages.
Gotcha. And Kim responds, I feel your pain, Paula. Okay, more questions.
I have one for Emily from Donna.
Okay.
It says, your discussion of manufactured intimacy is fascinating. Can you comment on how you believe a person or how your characters did preserve their identities and not lose themselves in this time of heightened accessibility and inauthentic knowability? Can't wait to read your book.
That's a great question. Thank you. So I think that is the fundamental struggle for Dylan in my novel, is how can she, to what extent is she allowed to keep some of herself to herself? And one of the questions what I've done in put a big secret Dylan carries at the heart of the book. I have sort of, what I tried to do was like really turn up the dial, like to the, to 11 on that question, right? And to have us really wonder as readers, as we're reading the book, what does Dylan owe us? Does she really have to tell us this? And by extension there, what I'm asking is, what do our stars really owe us? How much is it fair? How much are we allowed to ask of them? And that, I think, I guess what I'm saying is, I'm almost like flipping the question rather than saying like, how does the star preserve something of themselves? I'm sort of saying like, what's fair to ask of them? And why do we feel we can just take, and they can never give us enough?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very timely question as we watch people's lives on social media in such a intimate way. That's all.
Well, definitely. I think that's how, like how a way I tapped into the feeling, because certainly I'm not, I don't know, Kendall Jenner, right? Like I, like that experience of all of us feeling like we know someone we don't really know because of the internet is a way I could access that.
Yeah, thank you.
I have another question for Nikki from Maureen Roberts. Besides Mrs. Norris, who is your favorite worst mother in literature?
Oh, gosh, that's a really good one. And I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously there's Mommy Dearest. It's a difficult one. I do think this mother thing is such an interesting, because it's such an important bond and it's your first ever bond. So I'm going to struggle to come up with an instant answer, but Mrs. Norris is definitely the not just a terrible mother. She's not a mother in the book, but she's just a terrible person. And I do really like awful characters. I think they're so much more interesting than nice characters. So I did have a lot of fun recreating Mrs. Norris as Margot. But I'm going to study this question. I shall have an answer for you.
That's fair. I like
We have
that.
a few people writing in their ideas. They said Lady Macbeth, Matilda's mother.
She's pretty bad.
I echo Matilda's mother. I really do.
Back to you, Nikki. One more question. Sylvia Chipka Wanani wants to know, Nikki, what feedback have you received from your family?
Well, my mother loves it, which is really good because she didn't really love Wahala. So she tells me how much she loves it by telling me how much she didn't like Wahala on a loop. So that's quite entertaining. My sister is my biggest fan, so she absolutely loves it. My dad, I'm going to see him next week in Lagos, and he'll listen on audiobook because his sight isn't very good now. But no, although I do draw on my life a lot, I'm hoping that none of them will recognize themselves too much. And anyway, I'll just deny it. I'll just pretend it's not them when my mum tries to figure out if she's Mrs. Lizzie or Margot, I shall just say neither.
Okay, I'm going to just keep going on here because we've got questions on Facebook. And this again is from Maureen Roberts. She's with Baltimore County Public Library for Paula. She wants to know, was it challenging to write a shorter thriller?
I mean, this book sort of is an outlier because I think my books had been getting kind of longer and longer. Sometimes it just works out that way. I was really pleased actually because I wanted it to be sort of to feel taut and quite spare, and I think it just kind of, because I understood the concept quite early on. That doesn't always happen for me. Sometimes it takes me a long time to kind of figure out how everything's going to fit together. But in this novel, I could kind of see it quite quickly, and it just happened to fit this really nice tight timeline, which was actually really satisfying to write. I think, apart from The Girl on the Train, this is the book I enjoyed writing the most, and I hope that you can feel that in the writing. But it definitely, it felt like a book that had this very sort of truncated, very sort of tight world. There's only a few people in it. The whole thing feels quite sort of claustrophobic, and as though you could fit it all on an island.
Yeah,
I'm really jealous of that because my book spans 2 decades and 2 continents, and it was this unwieldy beast when I was editing it, trying to pull it together. So my next book, 1 character, 1 day, see how that goes.
so
Might be hard to say they're not somebody though. If they come and say, "Who am I?" and you're like, "Well, the only one character."
Okay, with about 7 minutes left, we want to make sure we get all the questions in. Of course, we had questions of our own. Paul, I wanted to ask you about Vanessa, but people, this is for librarians to ask their questions, and so this is just wonderful. We have so many people who are attending and so engaged, and lots of comments, lots of questions, but lots of comments. So excited about all of these books, and so let's see. So for Paula, Ellie Shirley wants to know, what made you pick that particular Scottish island among many remote locations? A good question.
I should say it's not a real island; it's a made-up island. Because I wanted to sort of manipulate it to fit my ends. I mean, I was inspired by a couple of things. I'd gone on holiday to the coast of Brittany in France, actually, and I discovered these tidal islands, and they struck me as an amazing location for a thriller, partly because you can have a whole locked room thing going on, but also because of this idea of what kind of person would want to go and live in a place like that. But then I moved it to Scotland because I didn't want it to be sun-drenched and French. I wanted it to be cold and windy and dark and, you know, stormy. And I spend a lot of time in Scotland now, and I have a lot of holidays on the West Coast. So it's a landscape that I know, and it's a landscape that really lends itself to darkness and to thrillers and to unpleasant things happening. So that's why I put it there.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay, we have another one. Anna, what's the funniest thing that happens to Magda on the road trip?
It's
I
great.
don't know if I can say without spoiling it. I would say that over the course of the trip, you really get to see her sense of humor come out, and this very buttoned up person that you meet at the outset of the story becomes steadily more liberated as the absurdity increases. So you will know the funniest bit, but unfortunately I can't say what it is.
That's what makes a great book. It's so hard to talk. So sometimes it's just so impossible to talk about a book without ruining it. So
Yeah. When I was thinking of questions for Emily, like the best part of this book is that secret that you just like want to keep reading to find out. So I do have a question for you, not about the secret. I love how you formatted this book. Instead of doing like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, or even chronologically, we have like the present day, which is 2022, and then you go through like these portions of her life, Dylan's life, based on, I don't have a better term for eras than like, you know, the debut album, the divorce, blah blah. So can you talk about why you chose that formatting and what you think it lended to the book?
Yeah, so the book is really 3 timelines, right? It's the present day, it's the story in the distant past of Dylan's friendship with Kelsey, and then it's this middle timeline that spans the 2, that is the arc of her career. And that in the book is structured around the album premises. And I did it that way because not only because I really like the idea of, particularly again for women artists, the way we sort of demand that they evolve, and so how we can track how her art is evolving from record to record. But I also did it because one of the things that Dylan is processing is how much of my art is because of this one person and this one relationship. And so she's sort of comparing a record and the construction of that record and who was in her life at that time, who her boyfriend was, who her best friend was, who her collaborators were, where she was living, you know, Nashville, New York, LA. How much of that went into the sauce of the record, and how much of this friendship from 15 years ago seeped into the record. And I don't know, I mean, I think that that's something that a lot of artists, whether that's a musician or, you know, a writer, are subconsciously working through, right? Like, how much of me is in this work? How much of me from 10 years ago is in this work? How much of me now is in it?
I think what I love about this book is you take a really specific situation. Like, none of us, to my knowledge, are mega pop stars, and after reading this book, I'm very glad that we're not. But you take this like really specific situation, and it's somehow so universal, which I mean, Dylan even talks about with her music, and I think we all kind of think of our lives like pinned by big events to some extent, or maybe that's just me, but I just thought it was really brilliant how you did that with the chapters as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, we have a question for Paula, but Lainey thinks we might be giving something away. Is that what you're thinking, Lainey? So we should.
Oh, I don't know. We might have spoken a little bit about it. I don't know, but we can see.
Well, there's just, you know what the thing is, Paula, everybody is so interested and intrigued by this island. I think everybody watching has a small fantasy about being on that island for a little bit. I'll ask it. The characters are very complex and the island. So I appreciate the short chapters that let us take a breath. Isolation is very much the theme in the island and the characters of Vanessa and Grace, and they seem to isolate to protect themselves. Is this intentional?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Vanessa has gone to this place because she feels that she needs she needs the freedom to create. She's got a particular vision for how she wants to live her life. She wants to be untethered from the world. Grace, on the other hand, who's a doctor, is going for very different reasons. So she's one of those people who kind of never quite feels that she fits. She's struggled to make friends. She's struggled to find her place in the world, and she's ended up sort of moving around and has sort of kept moving until she's kind of on the edge of the country there. But by seeking out a sort of a very small community where she can practice, she sort of feels that maybe this is the kind of place she can fit in. There's not that many people to fit in with, so it sort of works for her. And the two of them, they then sort of form this kind of odd couple relationship because Grace has struggled so much with friendships in her life. She's so gratified when Vanessa is kind to her. So they form an odd sort of quite unequal friendship, but it is a very real and at times incredibly tender friendship. But there's an unequal power relationship in that friendship, and that those power relationships are constantly shifting throughout the book. And I think that's one of the interesting things to watch is who holds the upper hand, who feels like they hold the upper hand, which is perhaps not how we should think about friendships, but I think sometimes people do.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. We didn't give too much away, I don't think. I don't think we
No,
gave anything
there's
away.
nothing at all.
It's just more bait on the hook.
Can I just say that this is not about this question at all, but it's about the Blue Hour. I thought the descriptions of her artwork, especially the paintings, I could smell that paint. It was so like these are words, but I could see those paintings. So I just want to say how beautiful that
Well,
was.
thank you. That's great to hear.
And for the same reason, like I said, Emily, your pop album when? I'm waiting for it. It was so fun reading the lyrics in that. I was just like, I don't know. I would have been stressed out writing song lyrics, but I was like, wait, I kind of want a full version of this. Like, you got me hooked.
Well, if anyone is listening from Nashville, if you know any, publishing labels who would like someone to consult, I love Nashville. Would love to come hang out.
Perfect.
Now's the time. The writing in all of these books is so beautiful, and haunting and heartbreaking, and yet funny and thoughtful. And each one of these books is unique. They're also different, and they're really so wonderful. And it's been so great to have you all with us here tonight. So, and we thank everyone out there who's been watching and commenting and sending up lots of love emojis. It's great. And as I said, we will be playing a bit of this at ALA. So we will be sharing this, all the books again, and with the hundreds of librarians who will be coming to our buzz. And Paula Hawkins, we're going to do a galley drop right there. So that's the first place at ALA that people will be able to get their hands on the galley. And I thank you again. I don't want to rush us, but I want to make sure we've gotten to everybody. And have we?
We got them all. We got them all pretty much covered. Yeah.
Is there anybody need to say anything, or is there anything we haven't said that you'd like to just before we sign off? Have we said it all? I think we have.
I think everyone's just ready to go get the e-galleys and get reading.
Well, there
I'm
they
excited.
are. So once again, let's show the jackets. Okay, and let's also show a reminder of what's happening at ALA. And we hope that you all can join us. But you can certainly download the galleys and start reading. And if you are a voter for Library Reads, and we hope that you are, download, read it, love it, vote. And these books are coming out in the fall, so you have time, which is lovely. And we will not be back until September, so we're taking a little bit of a break here. And what a way to end this long run of wonderful discussions with these authors over the months. So we thank you all again for coming, and we've got the jackets up.
Yeah, just had the jackets, and then I wanted to remind everyone that even though they won't see us in July and August, if they're at ALA, they can see us. Unfortunately, no live sea lions in the convention center. Virginia asked, and they told her no.
Don't like to take no for an
And if
answer.
you're not going to ALA and you can't make the buzz, we're gonna do it's not the same buzz, so that's a caveat, but we are doing a virtual event with Booklist in July. So look out for more info on that. So you can't make it, that's okay. You'll see us this summer, don't worry.
And you'll be hearing us talk about these books for months and months and months to come. But right now, once again, we have Paula Hawkins, The Blue Hour, going on sale October 29th. This Motherless Land by Nikki May going on sale also October 29th. Once More from the Top by Emily Layden is going on sale September 10th. And our lead read, How Does That Make You Feel? MAGDA EKLUND by Anna Montague, going on sale October 22nd. So there you have it. A little bit of everything for everybody right here tonight. Paula, Nikki, Emily, Anna, thank you so much for tonight. This was a huge treat for us and for librarians across the country. So many, many thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
So much.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of the summer, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.